Hi everybody, welcome to the Greater Sydney Landcare online webinar series. My name's Bron, I'm the local Landcare coordinator with Greater Sydney Landcare. We hope you've been doing okay during lockdown. We would love to be outside on the ground, but unfortunately we're unable to be. So we wanted to bring you some interesting stories that you can enjoy at home. So the first one tonight is with Danielle Packer, and she'll be talking about her work that she's doing with Platypus out with the Cattai Hills Environment Network. So before we start, I just wanted to do some housekeeping. So with any questions that you've got, there's a Q&A button that you can click and then type your questions in there, and we'll get back to them at the end of the session. Okay. And just to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm on, the Darug people, and pay respect to elders past and present and emerging, and all the lands that you're joining us from as well.
So yeah, thank you, Bron, for that introduction. As she said, yep, I do work for Greater Sydney Landcare as their project coordinator, but also work for CHEN. So I'll be talking about how CHEN is involved in this new platypus project. So who is CHEN? CHEN is short for Cattai Hills Environment Network, and we're a non-for-profit organisation working to connect the Hillshire community to their local natural environment. So we're a group of volunteers, community members, landholders in the area, and we meet up once a month at the Annan Grove Hall within the Hillshire, and we discuss environmental issues that we want to take a part in making some positive change. So Landcare is a big part in what we do to bring the community back to nature and be a part of, like I said, creating positive change in the environmental space. I will give it a shout out. You can see that lovely lady there in the first circle, Sue Martin. So she was a big part of getting CHEN created really in 2016. She's a volunteer and, as I said, is the chair of CHEN. So yeah, she's a legend. I've been working for them for about a year and a half now as their project Cattai Aware project officer, and we do a variety of things, like I said, Landcare, but we also do a lot of school education. So you can see in the photos to your left and to your right, we do a lot of waterway education, connecting the school students to their waterways. And you can see the photo in the middle. That's our famous, very proud of Landcare group at a school in Dural, Steiner School. It's a beautiful Landcare group made up of all sorts of people, all ages. So it's a really special one. But not only that, we also do, and that's why you're all here, the Platypus Project. So this is a very exciting project that we've been working on. So it was from 2016, we heard tales of fishermen, local fishermen saying that they'd seen platypus, or local residents, but there wasn't actual scientific evidence of this. And without that evidence, we can't really prove it properly, or we can't really tell what the population, how they're doing. So partnering with Dr. Michelle Ryan, so you can see her on your left holding a beautiful platypus. So she works for Western Sydney University, and she's a member of CHEN and our platypus expert. So we rely on her a lot to lead us in research and conservation. So just so you know where the Cattai catchment is, I've included a map on your right. So the Cattai catchment starts from around the Castle Hill area, so quite urban, and then it goes all the way to the top of Wiseman's Ferry, and is bordered by the Hawkesbury River and Old Northern Road. So this is our area, this is our special area that we look after. So just to step a bit back for a bit, platypus distribution. The platypus is an Australian icon. It's only in Australia, and it's only on the eastern border, on the eastern coast of Australia. So you can see that it starts off in Cooktown, Queensland, and goes all the way along the eastern coast down to even Tasmania down there. So it extends from tropical to alpine environments. So are platypus endangered? That's a really good question. So platypus have, because of their elusive and quite shy nature, they're also nocturnal. So their waking hours are during the night, sometimes the early morning and the late evening. So they're quite hard to monitor. So based on recent studies, we have seen that there is quite a strong decline in platypus numbers, as well as local extinctions in some areas, such as South Australia. So over the past 30 years, their habitat unfortunately has shrunken by at least 22%, or 200,000 kilometres, as we know so far, which is an area almost 3 times the size of Tasmania. So that's pretty scary. They are already endangered in South Australia, as I mentioned before, and recently listed as in Victoria as vulnerable, but which is great that they've upped the listing, but it is really important that we get more research to really show that these platypus are in serious help, and if they are threatened, they should be listed as threatened nationally. That way we can get, the Australian government can really help us fund habitat restoration projects. So more research is really needed. So discovering platypus in the Hills Shire. So now that we have this new technology called environmental DNA, Western Sydney University, so Dr. Michelle Ryan and CHEN teamed up to formulate a research project to scientifically evaluate the presence of platypus within the Cattai and Little Cattai Creek catchments. So that's really exciting. But what is eDNA? What is environmental DNA? So this is an amazing, innovative, non-invasive sampling technique that actually collects DNA from a variety of samples, environmental samples. So it can be soil, water in our case, air or snow. So that's where the animal leaves traces of DNA in the form of feces, hair, gametes, carcasses or skin. So of course, in our case, the platypus leaves behind traces of hair and dead skin within the water, and we are able to use a simple sampling technique to test for platypus DNA. So that's pretty crazy. So a group of us, CHEN volunteers, this was in 2020, sampled 18 sites across the Cattai catchment. And yeah, it was great to just get the community involved as well, like getting them partaking in citizen science and getting to see the different sites. We also got them to do some water testing while they were there, as well as a habitat assessment, which will really help understand why platypus are where they are. So where were the positive sites? Well, positive platypus eDNA, all right? So 9 out of the 18 sites sampled were positive. So that was a really big surprise. It was very exciting. The creeks are just below there, the Cattai Creek, Little Cattai Creek, Ahara's Creek, Blue Gum Creek, and Jurul Creek were all returned positive. I'll just give you a close-up. So where the yellow dots are where platypus are positive. Now, it is really important to know that environmental DNA, this is a snapshot of platypus in time. So we know that platypus were there at the time of testing within that 24-hour period. So we can confirm 100% that they were there using those DNA testing. The DNA can stay in there for as long as a few days to up to a few weeks, but that's when the reliability is a bit funny. So we can at least know, and all we really did need to know is that they've been there in the past 24 hours. So the other creeks that are within the Cattai catchment, it doesn't mean that platypus aren't there. It just means that at the time of testing, this is where they've gone. So this also shows the need for us to do more and regular platypus monitoring. So when we did this testing, yeah, it was all over the media. We got a lot of media coverage. This is a snapshot from ABC. So we did see that if you look back, a lot of them are in urban areas. So you can see in Jurul Creek, there's 2, and there's 1 in Cattai Creek. There's quite a few in Cattai Creek, actually. So, you know, we did question, why are they so close to urban areas? In these degrading waterways. You know, she says here that the data tells us that there are platypus present, but the population possibly isn't healthy enough to sustain itself for a long time. She also says that this comes at a pivotal time because we are seeing so much development in the northwest sector of Sydney. So that's really great that we're here now doing this research. You guys are all here now listening, and you want to learn how can you do your part to help platypus, to help improve waterway health. So thank you again for all of you guys being here. You're helping spread that message. So what are the threats to platypus? Well, unfortunately, a lot of them are due to human activities. Platypus actually don't have many native predators. Usually those predators are feral dogs in general, feral cats and foxes. But here we're going to be focusing on habitat degradation from riparian vegetation removal. There are also threats such as stormwater runoff entering the creeks and causing pollution and altering their flow regimes. There's livestock and deer trampling along the creek banks. Fishing activities, angling, fishing nets and traps. So you can see in the photo, that was a pretty disastrous one, 8 platypus in a net, absolutely horrible. There's also litter and climate change. So more frequent floods, droughts and fires, which will definitely play a toll on platypus. But we'll be focusing today on the impacts riparian vegetation removal can have on platypus habitat. So how does it impact platypus habitat? Well, the creek banks collapse, weeds take over, erosion, sediment accumulation. So we'll be going through these. You can see in the photos here, so this is actually on one of the landholders, the Platypus landholders sites, which I'll be talking a little bit about soon. You can see the severe erosion that's going on there. You can see that the trees have fallen, the banks are heavily eroded, and there's a lot of sand and silt deposition on the creek bed. So this is really exciting. I love sharing these photos. This was a platypus burrow that Dr. Michelle Ryan found herself within the Cattai catchment. So we got really excited about this. Unfortunately, I can't tell you where they're from. You know, we don't want to get people running over there trying to find a platypus and stomping on the banks. But know that it is in the Cattai catchment. So you can see that there's an entry there. There's a couple exits. So why am I showing you this? Well, to create a burrow, platypus need sturdy banks to be supported by native plants. They also need overhanging vegetation over the entrances of the burrows for protection as well. So burrows, they can go as deep as 20 meters. So that really gives you an idea of how important it is to have deep-rooted vegetation. You can also see that the lamandras, you can see that they're covering the burrow entrance. And they're really great at sturdying the bank up. That's really important. Weeds. So weeds provide no or little stability for the creek banks. Now, of course, there are some plants that are weeds, they're big trees, and I'm sure that they're going to be really great at keeping the banks hold. But majority of the time, and especially of the sites that we've seen, weeds that are flimsy and don't really have good root structures are taking over. And you can see in this photo here, I will point out that these photos are all from the Cattai catchment. So, and are actually on the sites that we've done eDNA sampling. So you are getting a real life scenario of where platypus are living and what they have to deal with. So yeah, weeds, they reduce the shade cover. So it's really important to have shade along the creek, because without that, there's a lot of sunlight penetration, and that reduces the dissolved oxygen levels, as well as aquatic weeds. If you have a lot of aquatic weeds in the water, they suffocate and choke the water bodies, taking up all that dissolved oxygen as well. The banks are vulnerable to erosion, silt and sand accumulation, and there's little essential nutrient cycling going on there. So I've got a diagram here just to help out. So you can see in the images the difference from the first example to the last one. So there's a lack of riparian native vegetation. There's low nutrients in there, so low phosphorus and nitrogen. There's little plant growth. But then as we go down, we can see that nutrients are higher. There's more light exposure, and there's algae growing, also suffocating the waterways. And these are really imperative for the next slide, which I'll show you. Erosion and silt accumulation. So you can see here that without these native plants along the creek banks, they're completely vulnerable to erosion, which sees a lot of sediment deposition on the creek floor. Usually, the creek floor is made up of rocks, pebbles, gravel. That's what you want to see. And you want to see that because platypus prey live under these substrates. And so without them, platypus food availability becomes scarce. So the platypus diet is primarily made up of macroinvertebrates. So you can see on the first photo that there's a platypus foraging on the creek floor for macroinvertebrates, which live under these rocks, pebbles, leaf matter that these bugs eat. So when we have such, they actually are a really great waterway health indicator. So when you have a large diversity of macroinvertebrates, you know that the waterways are looking really good. Some water bugs are quite sensitive, while others are quite hardy. So the sensitive water bugs, when the water quality changes, for example, there's pollution or a lot of weeds, they're becoming suffocated, you'll see them go downstream. And so the platypus is left with a very small range of its food source. So what does healthy platypus look like? Well, this is, again, a photo from the Cattai catchment. So thank goodness there are some beautiful areas that the platypus can live in. So a platypus loves wide riparian zones. And as we discussed previously, avoiding those with sand or silt accumulation, overgrowth of aquatic plants, high salinity and low dissolved oxygen, which are all associated with those things that we were just discussing. So again, the platypus need a creek floor with rocks, pebbles, and gravel. And they like to have banks that have deep roots holding the banks together. They also rely on vegetation that overhangs from the banks for protection from predators. So you can see in this photo, you can see nothing but beautiful native vegetation. A lot of the ferns would make great coverage for those burrows, as well as lomandras holding up the banks. They're really great at that. And some beautiful melaleucas. So knowing that this platypus, knowing that we have all these degraded sites, we need a voice for the platypus, you know? So CHEN decided, hey, we need a platypus landcare group. And so we created one. So 6 landholders that back onto Cattai and Blue Gum Creek have joined together to form a platypus corridor to restore the riparian zones of these creeks. Now, this group is removing the weeds from the banks and surrounding bushland to improve natural regeneration of the native plants there, which have been smothered by small and large leaf privet and trad. So you can see there these lovely ladies that are part of the land care group, and in doing so, when we remove the weeds, we make sure we do it in a mosaic pattern and we're not just completely annihilating the privet, because privet is one of those trees that can potentially be used to uphold the banks. They are quite large trees, and the burrows that we did see previously had a lot of privet along the edges as well as lomandras. So it's definitely a methodological process. So I just wanted to include a map of the sites of where the landholders are. They're in a nice line there. So you can see that the top creek is Cattai and below is Blue Gum. And so, you know, the more landholders we get, the more people we get involved, the more platypus habitat that we can look after. So here is Dr. Michelle Ryan on one of our first platypus land care events. So Dr. Michelle Ryan, she came along to teach to the group about platypus and how their efforts are improving platypus habitat. Overall, land care is just such a great way to bring the community together, connect them to their natural surroundings, and just make them aware of these local issues that they can be a part of creating positive change for. So it was really great as well, because the sites that we did have, I suppose, Conservation Volunteers Australia, they really helped us by spreading our message, and they got a lot of people, volunteers from all over Greater Sydney, to come and listen about platypus and be a part of making better platypus habitat. So it's a really great way of spreading our message. This is another one of our landholders. So yeah, next year we will be, with Creating Canopies in 2022, planting native trees and shrubs along the banks of Cattai Creek at 1 or 2 of our landholder properties. So now that we've removed the weeds, as we go along, we can work to stabilize the banks by planting native plants. So this is one of the examples of before and after on this lady's property. It's pretty hard to take a before when there's just lantana there. So you can see in the before photo that tree just poking its head out. But yeah, this property was just completely smothered with lantana and privet. So we created a path to the creek so we can then begin looking after the riparian zone. But we did an amazing job, and even here you can see we're all having a good look at our works and really happy with it. Our landholder was definitely happy. And this is just a snapshot of her property as well. So you can see the creek there, and as we were talking about before, you can see that the creek bank, the floor there's a lot of sand and silt deposition there. So I'm sure you're all looking, where are all the rocks, where are all the cobbles, where are platypus going to eat? You can see the banks, they don't look very sturdy. They look like there's a lot of erosion there. So you can already tell from the information that I've been giving you, it doesn't look like really good platypus habitat here going on. So the landholder was very upset to hear that. Unfortunately, she was like, no, I want my property to be the one that platypus lives in. And she's an amazing lady and is working really hard to make that happen. So she's been planting plants all by herself, sharing her work with the Platypus Land Care group. So she's very inspiring. So what can you guys do to help? Well, quite a bit. So those of you that do have land, you guys have a lot of power, a lot of power. Ensure that there's vegetation along the riparian edge of the creek. This is essential, as we've been talking about. And as you can see here in the photo, even without the cows, if the land was like that, you could see just how eroding the banks are. And so if you do have livestock, maybe if you don't have vegetation there yet, think about maybe installing some fencing to limit their access. Just give them a small part of that creek to drink water and whatnot, because yeah, these cows with their hooves, they're stomping on the banks, eroding them. Platypus aren't going to be able to create a burrow within that. They're also defecating in the water. So there's a lot of issues with that, and it's quite common in the Hillshire. If you do have property that backs onto a creek here in the Hillshire, feel free to reach out to us here at CHEN or your local land care coordinator for assistance in caring for your property. So what are other ways outside of removing vegetation? What are other ways that you can help? So litter. Yes, it is there again, hurting all sorts of wildlife. So litter, if it's not disposed of properly, it can end up in our waterways. And platypus, because of their feet, their webbed feet, when they do get plastic rings or rubbers around their necks or around their bellies, they can't get it off. So at the end, it ends up just creating this nash, this cut, which ends up being infected and usually leads to death, which is really sad. I've just put a slide here to show that we can, before disposing things like plastic rings and rubbers, to cut them before we dispose of them. You can also see in the picture to your left, that is a closed yabby style trap. So they are, yeah, they're a big killer. They are banned in New South Wales and Victoria now, which is great. But unfortunately, people still do use them. So it is important to remember that platypus do breathe air and they do love yabbies. So if you've got some yabbies in there and you're catching yabbies, it's going to, if you leave that unattended for even for more than 10 minutes, a platypus can get in there and unfortunately drown. So it's really important to use open style yabby traps. Fishing lines as well shouldn't be left attended. Some people cut the line and they leave it in the creek, and unfortunately that can get wrapped around platypus, and not even just platypus, turtles and other sorts of aquatic wildlife as well. So what can you do to help platypus in your local community? So there are many things you can do. You can join your local environment group, such as CHEN. You can join your local land care group and get involved in doing some repairing riparian zones, a lot of bush regen, improving the bush, not only for platypus, but for other wildlife as well. You can partake in citizen science. Now, eDNA sampling is not going to come around all the time, but there are also other things that you can do, such as get involved in your local stream watch group. So Bron talked a little bit about stream watch at the beginning. I'm also involved in my own stream watch group at the Fred Catterson Reserve. You can get involved in water bug identification, which is usually hand in hand with stream watch, but it's a great way to monitor the health of our waterways, as well as just learn a lot about your local waterways as well, getting connected to your environment. You can join waterway cleanups. Like, that's pretty cool. You love to fish? Join your local fishing group, because in the next slide, amazing picture to your right, sorry. Ozfish is a great fishing network, I suppose, and they invited local fishing groups to come and do a cleanup of Cattai Creek. So that was, and they did an amazing job. Apparently didn't even scratch the surface. They had big canoes and whatnot, so they really went all out, and it was really inspiring to see, the community getting involved and really understanding the impact we can have on our environment. There's me and the local, this is Jess, the local stream watch coordinator. So we're there. She's training me how to use the equipment, and yeah, so that's been going on for about a year now. We also have a platypus hub. So this is really new. This is from, I think in April, this has started. This is at the Community Environment Centre in Annangrove within the Hillshire. So it's where CHEN meets for their monthly meetings. It's where we discuss all our platypus projects. and it's got a whole bunch of platypus resources in there. So it's open Thursdays and Fridays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm there on Fridays, so they're open door policy. You can come in, check out the centre. We're always happy to encourage any volunteer opportunities. We also have an Eco Kids program there. You can see the logo in the corner. So that's just getting kids within the Hills Shire from ages 2 to 10 and getting them involved in just bringing them back to nature, getting them outside. And we do a lot of waterway and platypus education with the kids as well, because they live here. Like, how cool is that? Your platypus are your neighbours. So we're really trying to bring that to schools as well. So that's it, guys. That's from me. I do want to say, though, that if you do have property that backs onto Cattai or Blue Gum Creek or any other creek within the Cattai catchment, and you want to help improve platypus habitat, or you just want to join in the platypus land care efforts, or you saw something that I talked about or Bron talked about before and you want more information, feel free to email me or check out our website or Facebook page. We've got a lot of great information up there and just shows a lot of the work that we've been doing. So I'll hand back to Bron or Kira.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions, Danny, so
Yep.
we might go through a couple of them. Firstly, who can we report platypus sightings to?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. So to be honest, you can use a number of pathways. Actually, there's an app called Platypus Spot. So you can use that app, and that is for nationwide. So that would be really great. You can also report platypus sightings to the Australian Platypus Conservancy. Or if it's within the Hills Shire, you can contact me and I can get into contact with Dr. Michelle Ryan. So it would be amazing if we could let her know, because she's doing on the ground research. So that would also be a great alternative.
Perfect. And we can share that in an email afterwards for those people that are interested. What is the range of eDNA? So is it possible that a reading could be coming from further upstream in different creeks? How far does it travel?
It's about I think 1 kilometre maximum. So yeah, we're getting 1 kilometre distance. So we did have to be quite choosy about where we collected the sample. We had to make sure it was at least 1 kilometre from upstream. Yeah, so that's it really.
Yeah, I think after that point it starts to decompose a little bit too much for the sample. Yeah. Excellent. Are there other East Coast groups like CHEN that are protecting platypus?
There are. I know that there are some land care groups out there. Mulgoa Land Care Group apparently just got a grant to do some platypus habitat restoration. So we're really jealous here at CHEN. As far as I can think of right now, that's all I can think of. There are some in Victoria as well, but I can find that out for you guys and we can include that in the email.
Perfect. There's another question about, do you know whether council's committed to creating on-site water detention basins in urban areas to ensure that peak flows of water are minimised, which would reduce erosion risk?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So the council have been really great in, they know a lot about what we're doing, and we've actually just created a platypus strategy with them. It's in its baby steps right now, but in terms of stormwater runoff and erosion and how we're looking after our waterways in that sense, I suppose they are looking to, with their new developments, rainwater gardens, for example, are essential in their development plans, which will reduce stormwater runoff and the effects that come with that. In terms of, I suppose, the structures we have now and changing them, that I suppose would be quite difficult for council to do, and I can't say if they're committed to that or not.
Yeah, I know with a lot of councils, as you said, a lot of these designs are implemented in their the new developments coming out.
Yes.
They're also doing a lot of it's called water sensitive urban design across their LGA, which some can be quite expensive, some are a little bit more inexpensive. But I know a lot of councils, it's usually part of their overarching operational plans. So it might be a good idea to have a look on their website, and we can potentially share any links we find as well. Another question is, what's the approximate cost of running an eDNA sampling project for around 20 sites? And can volunteers collect water samples?
So I'm actually not sure. I can't say how expensive that is. I would assume it would be a little bit, I can't say actually, I don't know. But I can find that out. Do you know?
I think I can't give an exact cost, but I know that they're not particularly cheap per sample. And it also depends on what, I guess, how detailed of a survey you're doing. So they run different, what's called an assay, which is essentially like I guess a catalogue that they compare the samples that they're getting against. So you have ones for mammals, you have ones for fish, invertebrates, and some of them overlap, but some of them don't. So depending how many of those assays you want to include, so what you're trying to capture, the price can go up from there. So in terms of collecting water samples from volunteers, the best method's probably to help out with Streamwatch, which we've mentioned a couple of times, and also potentially just keep an eye out for things like CHEN. They might ask for more volunteers in future for that kind of
I was going to say that,
research.
Yeah, like we do want to do this regularly, yearly, if that would be ideal. So if there is ever the opportunity, we will definitely be promoting that on our social medias.
Perfect. Does CHEN share information with wildlife groups such as WIRES?
Yeah, we've had a little bit of engagement with WIRES. I think we're actually working with the local land care coordinator and WIRES to run a webinar series about animals and what to do if you see them being run over. We do have a CHEN member who does volunteer with WIRES, Sydney Wildlife, I think. But we would definitely love to get more involved because they're definitely part of the mission of looking after our habitat and looking after our animals. So there's definitely potential to grow that relationship for sure.
Perfect. Someone's asked if we're allowed to share the presentation on our social media sites. So yeah, we've recorded this. We'll find the best way to store that online. And then we'll probably promote it as well through our social media. So yeah, feel free to share that once it's up on our page, and we can I can let you guys know at Gargary Swamp Care once it's up as well, specifically. And sorry, just being a little bit choosy because we have quite a few questions. Where can the public access some of these creeks, and would it be of benefit to place signs regarding yabby traps and the best sort of traps to use so that platypus don't get trapped?
Yeah, so as part of the strategy, we actually think that's a really good idea. We want to install bins along popular fishing sites to educate fishermen about the impacts of their traps, their lines. So that's a really good point. We're working towards that, definitely.
Perfect. Just a note as well, Catherine's reminded us that iNaturalist is a great place to log pretty much any wildlife sightings that you have as well. So keep that in mind, guys. Someone's asked if there's a contact in South Australia who could do eDNA on private property. I'd imagine, Danny, you could probably share the contact details of your researcher and she might have contacts.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we can share that a bit later on in an email. Just having a squiz. And Costa's asked, what was the name of the app again? He just missed it. I think that was the one that you said earlier.
Platypus Spot.
Excellent. Do you know of any platypus sightings in Ku-ring-gai? And are there any volunteer groups in this shire?
Again, I do not know, but I will definitely find out for you guys for sure.
I think there's definitely some bush care groups in that area.
There would be bush care, and there probably would be. I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't platypus there, but yeah, we haven't tested this. I can't really say.
Yeah, perfect. And Danny, what would be on your wish list in general to help you operate not just more efficiently, but grow and share what you do?
Ooh. Oh, okay. Yeah, if it was on my wish list, well, I would love to have, I suppose, funding to formulate a team that can work with me to create a habitat restoration program that crosses more than 5 or 6 landholders, but potentially more. So yeah, I think that would be on my wish list.
I think as well, it'd be good to get some more contacts. So if anyone here knows of people that have private property in those areas that might back onto a creek,
Definitely.
spreading the word, letting them know that there's platypus in there and that they can make a big difference by doing some small works on their land.
Definitely.
Perfect. We've covered most of the questions there, so I think that's pretty much it. Thanks, Danny, for an awesome presentation. As Bron said, feel free to contact us as well in terms of creating canopies. You can sign up online just for our newsletter, so we can let you know when we've got projects back up and running. And also don't forget to follow CHEN on Facebook. They post a lot of stuff regularly as well, and we'll let you know of any volunteering things that pop up.
Definitely. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks everyone for attending. We'll see you later.